There is something that's called La Fofole. Supposedly, these are children that died through some horrific accident to where they're demon-like children, and they appear in the shape of lights that try to get you to follow them so you'll be lost forever in the swamps.
But yeah, when you hear like scraping claws underneath the bed and it moves and you can, I was so terrified, dude. I pulled the blanket over my head. I could hear whatever it was breathing outside the sheet.
When I was a little after there, we got into a car accident, hit a moose. My mom ended up under the steering wheel of the car, and she had a big hand-shaped bruise on her shoulder. It was like somebody pushed her underneath the steering wheel. My mom should have gotten decapitated. The weird part was we hit a moose, and we had a moose hanging from the rearview mirror.
The only other thing that I could think of would be a bear, but there's no bears in that area either. It's just not the right habitat for them, and when you shoot at a bear's going to move. It's going to take off for the most part. And this thing just shot them and did nothing.
This material world that you're told is bound by science and everything else, obviously science and physics are very important. There is so much more out there that is left to study, that is left to learn about.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Investigation Cryptoparalogy. Sit back, get relaxed, and crack open your favorite cold beverage as we dive deep into the abyss of what we were told couldn't possibly exist. Find us on the web at www.investigation-cryptoparalogy. That's CRYPTOPARAOLOGY.com. On Facebook at www.facebook.com/investigation-crypto. Listen to us on any major podcast players, including Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and of course Spotify. We continue to spread to more podcast players each day. You may contact us by using the contact page on the website, or by sending a direct message to our Facebook page, or by emailing us directly at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. That is investigation, CRYPTOPARAOLOGY@gmail.com. Also, I would like to add this. If you're feeling down on yourself, or like you don't matter, or there's no hope left, we're here for you. You can contact us through our Facebook page or by emailing us at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. We are happy to listen and possibly help you find a better tomorrow. If you don't want to talk to us, you can contact the Suicide Hotline of the United States. They have a crisis text line if you verbally speaking to someone is not your thing. Text HOME, all capital letters, HOME, to 741741. If you do want to verbally speak to someone, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. And if you are a veteran, you can also call 1-800-273-8255 and then press 1. Good evening. Welcome to the History Corner with host Troy Polkey. Grab a cold one, sit back, and let's talk about the history you weren't taught in school. Tonight, we are going to be talking about dragons.
All right. Now, when you think about dragons, we come up with all kind of different images in our minds, and we think of the fantasy and the lore and how the dragon terrorizes the kingdom, like in different movies that you might have seen about it, or the cartoon like How to Train Your Dragon and so forth and so on, or the fire-breathing dragon that the knight has to rescue the maiden from, or the various dragons that are in various games that we play. Like, for example, the Elder Scrolls, or Diablo Immortal, or World of Warcraft, or other various games that are based on fantasy and lore and different things like that. But dragons have always been part of mythology. They've always had different legends and lore about them. For example, Tiamat being one of the ultimate evil dragons, Bahamut being the ultimate good, with the universal theme of good and evil. And science tells us that dragons, as far as science is concerned, would be like the Komodo dragon or the bearded lizards that you can have as pets, iguanas, different things like this. Archaeologists have found frozen a life-size female dragon with wings. I watched a documentary on this, and it was being researched as to whether or not they were actually going to include this in a museum or not, if it was real or fake, that something that was made up or whatnot. They actually thought it out. And from what they found, this was a real dragon, as far as exactly what you might think looked like in legend and lore, with the wings. What they could not figure out is, based on the wingspan, how could this thing take off in the air? So when they started doing the autopsy, they were cutting it open, they found an extra bladder. And they had to posit what this bladder might have been used for. These dragons, as far as the type of one that was found, or at least they know for sure the one that they found sulfur in its system inside that bladder. So it was eating sulfur and then another type of mineral that could then be ignited to shoot fire out of its breath, or to create helium in the bladder to lighten the weight of the dragon, so that the dragon could get the uplift to actually take flight. And the science actually makes sense as far as when I watched it on this documentary. And it was amazing to watch them work on this creature and to see what they were doing. And this guy actually got funding from the museum that hired him to continue exploring this. When they started doing further research, and this can actually be looked up, this dragon was particular to the region where they found it, which was in the northern part of the world, very cold region. Today, back at the time this dragon existed, the whole earth was temperate. They found out there were other types of dragon that have actually existed in various other parts of the world. They found marine dragons that were mostly water-based and could survive in the water areas. They found some in other areas that were of a different type, like in the forests, where they were a little bit smaller than this one that they found. They could hang around in the trees eating different things like that. Finding they were carnivores, so finding what prey they wanted to eat in that area. So based on that scientific evidence, what we once thought was just fantasy or lore actually turned out to be real. Now, where it got strange was the fact that in the cave where this dragon was found, they also found armor and shields and weapons and human bones. That gives rise to the fact that this dragon, while it was in its cave, had so-called knights around the medieval times coming in to try to kill it. And the dragon won most of those battles. The injury that they found on this particular dragon that actually caused its demise was actually inflicted from what they think was another dragon that it had gotten into a battle with, based on evidence that they found in it, teeth that were broken off and left inside this particular fawn. What we have to remember, folks, is that when more than one culture has legend and lore about a certain type of creature, chances are that that creature or some variant of it actually did exist. In Greek legend, there were dragons. In Norse mythology, there were dragons. In Hindu religion, there were dragons. Chinese religion, full of various dragons. Every religion that has ever existed on the planet has legend and lore based on that, which says that this was most likely true. If that's the case, then that's where all our legends and stories about the various dragons came about. These were very noble creatures. They were animals nevertheless, but they ruled the skies and the land. The dragon in question also, as far as from what they found, battled a T-Rex. So that gives you a sense of what size this dragon must be, because when they found the skull of this particular T-Rex, and the skull of this particular T-Rex is in a museum to where people can actually go see it, there are char marks on the skull of the T-Rex showing that it was burned at a very high temperature from another creature. Now, when people say, well, that just can't be, I don't care what you have to understand that even today, there are creatures that emit fire. There's a type of bug, and I forget what the actual name of it is, but it's actually called an exploding bug, that when it is in danger, it will emit a burning flame from its abdomen to ward off predators. If you look at what we call fireflies, that's a type of energy coming off of that. When you look at electric eels, they can shock a man to death. So to say that creatures don't have the power to reproduce different things that we see in nature, that would be a mistake. So fire-breathing, flying dragons do have a part in history. They really did exist. As far as that goes, they died off before modern civilizations could actually come about, because we've never seen one. Now that would bring us to the Loch Ness Monster that has been spotted, which may be a type of dragon that's left over from those long gone days. Scientists don't know. There have been scientists that have explored the bottom of Loch Ness and cannot find any evidence of this creature, and yet it keeps on being spotted. They did find a huge trench that leads out in a tunnel-like thing to where they have not been able to explore the complete length of or bottom of as of yet. So they don't know where this goes out to. Now, as far as fantastic creatures go, there's also been spotted on Google Earth what they think may actually be a megalodon that still exists. They caught a blip of it. You can actually look this up online. So a lot of things that we once thought, no, there's no way that that could possibly exist, do exist. There's fantastical things that do exist on our planet that we still have not explored 100% of. As far as our planet goes, we have not covered the entire Earth as far as full exploration, especially if we're talking about the oceans and such. So that's still an area that needs to be investigated more thoroughly. Or the cold regions, like in Antarctica. We still don't know what could be lying underneath all the ice that's there, because there's hardly any excavations that can be done because of the temperature. So all of these different beasts, we're looking at prehistoric times. We can't say no, they didn't exist, or yes, they did, because we don't know for sure what's going to be found later on. At the end of this documentary that I watched, the guy's boss at the museum was highly pleased with what he had actually found. Now, other bones of what they think might be dragons have been found even since then by various archaeologists. They're still not sure. They're still exploring it to see what it is. But there is no doubt at all that dragons have played a huge part in the development of myths and legends of mankind. That we have written stories upon stories about these larger than life creatures. Sometimes these creatures are magnificent. Sometimes they are the ultimate evil. Sometimes they're just beasts. We find out that, hey, these things really do exist. Now, when we look at various creatures that have been found on Earth and these fantastic things, it has to make us wonder what else is out there. What else is there that we could possibly discover that could make us rethink what the history of this land has to offer as far as that? Well, one of the things is giants, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, but giants have existed throughout history. They have been a race of giants. King Og of Israel was one of them. I talked about him in the last episode, but if we want to talk about the Bible, you have the Philistine Goliath. That was his name. This man was a giant. Shepherd boy David is the one that went in to battle him and was able to kill him using a sling that hit the giant's nose, right on the bridge of the nose, cracking the bridge of the nose, causing it to go up into the brain and killing the giant dead. And lodged right on the bridge of the nose underneath the giant's helmet. Guided by God's hand, according to the Bible, but nonetheless, yeah. And there was a group of researchers that actually started researching, did giants really exist? And a lot of the stuff that they found leads to the fact that giants have been around on this planet for some time. Now, Robert Wadlow was the tallest man ever recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records at almost 9 foot tall, a little bit better than 9 foot tall. Now, he did have something wrong with his pituitary gland, which was called giantism, which is why he wasn't able to live a life as long as what he should have. Andre the Giant was another one. But folks, they do have people that do not have anything wrong with their pituitary gland or any other health defects that have been recorded at over 8 feet tall. That is just in their genetics. So little about our planet that we know. So very little. And as the explorations go, it gets more and more interesting. These giants that the brothers discovered, it was a race of them, and they were rulers and kings and queens. And they even had a separate burial plot for them. And they had extraordinary strength. So take from it what you will, but these type of people really did exist in society of their time periods. I had to laugh because one time I actually had to call a plumber to come to my house, and the guy that showed up, when he got out of the truck, he almost couldn't fit in the doggone work truck. This dude stood up, and come to find out he was like 6'11". I was looking up at him going, wow, dude.
That's a big boy.
Or are you just going to use your hand to unclog the drain? Yeah, he's a big one. So you can't say never as far as stuff like that goes. But the one thing that I'm going to leave you with, and you're going to hear me say this in almost every single episode, if stuff is recorded from every society about a particular event or about particular types of animals that have existed or people or things like that, then you have to understand that these things came from somewhere. These people did not just create it out of the blue. Even in the Bible, it says that there were a race of giants that were called Nephilim that were offspring of angels and humans that had extraordinary superhuman strength. And they were called the men of fame. That leads to all of these different strong men or legendary men that you read about in different mythos, such as Thor, Hercules, Gilgamesh, and all these other different characters. So, with that thought, I'm going to leave you off, and as we do another one, we shall explore some more things that your teacher possibly have never told you about as far as the history of the world is concerned. In the next episode, we're actually going to talk about the rotten Romans, and there's a reason that I give them that actual title. And we'll talk about that next time.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. I sincerely hope you will join us again next time for another spine-tingling, hair-raising experience from the depths of the abyss. If you would like to contact me about an experience you have had or to get on the show, email me at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. That's investigation, CRYPTOPARAOLOGY @gmail.com. 'Cause my monster's